I always wanted to be a drummer. I just love the drums. The idea of Hulk smashing an instrument and creating music felt badass. Thus, my mother put me, in third grade, in drum classes, to her piano chagrin. If there was one thing my mother was disappointed in as I grew was my lack of girliness. I was not a gentle flower as much as a gentle giant. She was the original very demurtsy, very modest, at least in her head, and all my attempts to be girly, or at least define myself in a way that was girly, seemed to fail in her eyes and my uncontrollable frizz. She wanted me to love Barbies, but I love board games. She wanted me to lose weight and wear nicer, more succession beige dresses. I had no problem wearing a leopard print with a chi out. To her, I was an extension of her, which made how I saw me wrong and ungirly. My identity was totally defined by how she identified me in her world. Thus, my turn into a drummer felt doomed unless I excelled, which is often how things went. If I was going to be different from my mother, I had to be excellent in that difference. It was third grade. I was convinced that I was going to be the best drummer in the world. By then, I knew I was a singer and actress, but imagine doing both while drumming. The parents had gathered in rows of gray fold up chairs, and I was nervous and super excited, which are interchangeable feelings to me. We were going to play a series of delightful classics like Twinkle, 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 Little Star and the Star Spangled Banner. It was rich. We were doing it big and had an orchestra, flutes, clarinets, and even violins. The spectacular began. It is always weird to judge the parent that shows up, especially when the other either does not show up at all or at least cannot do so without bringing a ton of their issues and bad vibes. Often we were we have a harshness towards a safe parent. But what is safety? And is it actually love? My father thought he was not an abuser because he did not hit us physically, but he sure did every other way. Yet my mother had a real tendency to triangulate and try to turn a crowd against me, particularly under the veil of humor. I kept on looking for my mom and unfortunately found her. She was sitting between my grandmother and an empty chair, of which my dad never showed. A sigh. Luckily, he did not, because it left the chair empty for her to lift her legs in laughter because we were so bad. Lo and behold, we were not ready for Carnegie Hall, as I thought, but to my mother, we were sure prepped for Gainiceria. The night was 20 to 30 minutes of what I truly believed was symphonic music, but turned into my mother laughing so loud and obnoxiously, with a genuine belief that every parent would join her in making fun of their own kid. She looked around her as if to say, "Don't they suck, right?" And some parents gave her a compassionate giggle. Yet this moment would define a triangulating problem in my mother and I's relationship. Her need to gather a crowd to either make me a joke or then into a or turn them into a jury of how I somehow inept to her needs. Meanwhile, the crowd was filled with parents holding recording devices and thumbs up, while my mother could barely hold in her laughter. I was crushed. I cried, and I was told I was humorless. The next week, I would be taking either piano or drums, and my dreams of being Mozart were gone. All right, let's discuss, let's heal. So, it's really hard for me to talk about my mother and the kind of cruelties that she did towards me because, for a strange reason, and it's something that I talked about with my mother a few weeks ago, I feel like I was my mother's mother. She made sure we were materially stable. She made sure I was materially stable, and in exchange I made sure she was mentally and emotionally. And I think that's why sometimes she resents me because I can't heal your wounds. And sometimes, and I especially can't heal them if you put yourself in the same situations to get them. And so I hate using this word, narcissistic, because triangulation is defined as a narcissistic tactic, which is to turn the crowd against someone, right? If there's three, it's two against one. My mother kind of did it more so like privately, like if there was literally three people. My father just did it with the whole family. I did find at first with one of his families. It was this kind of, I was my father's emotional scapegoat. I was my mother's, I guess, emotional triangle. And it's this thing, and it's something that I noticed in a prior episode, a University Lake, I've been noticing Daddy Recovery has helped me notice patterns. And these patterns are tied to memories and events of just, wow, like this person is saying the same thing or acting in the same way or doing the same thing. So this might have been in third grade, but trust me, this was not the last time. And it's something that happens all the time, even now, where I called my mother last week. And my mother has a tendency to adopt every child except her own. I mean, she mothers everybody, and she thinks I'm jealous when I tell her, I wish she could talk to her friends for 5 hours. She barely reaches 5 minutes with me. And she calls them. I call her. Like there's no extension. I go to her. I protect her. I make sure she's okay. And she always thought I was jealous, but the truth is, I noticed at how tender and soft she was with everybody except me. And now I just gave up. Like, I'm never going to get her to be nice to me. There's never going to be a moment. She may love me, but she doesn't like me. And I think that's something very common in triangulation, particularly if you are the daughter of a people pleaser. It's this kind of, I always felt in my family, and this might be common in Latino households, of because of the machismo, this sense of, women are the ones that make sure that the family stays together. They are the emotional and mental anchor the of the household, and they can never waver. Men could waver as a provider. In fact, they could be the stealer, like my dad. And it's this weird kind of, I always felt the women in my family. It was worse for my mother because I was her only daughter and she was my grandmother's only daughter. It was worse for them in the sense of my other family members had multiple daughters and multiple sons, and we were all raised uncles, aunts, we were all raised like siblings, but they had multiple kids. And what I would notice they would do is there was always that one daughter. The daughters had way more pressure to make sure everything went right compared to the boys, but there was always that one daughter that was really the emotional scapegoat battering ram. Like it didn't matter. Like mommy did not have to like me or protect me. Mommy can absolutely ish on me. She made everybody pancakes and she made me a waffle. Like that kind of dynamic. And I think we had that dynamic to our failure in amongst us as a trio, because I I think our ability to be so generous and so loving with everybody except ourselves has manifested to each other because we see each other as a unit. My mother feels I am her and she is her mom. Obviously she doesn't feel that in a negative way. She's not her mom in any bad way except in the exact way. And it's this thing we do of like, we'll be amongst friends and like, look how she treats me. Am I right? And I never saw that dynamic when I would go over to my friends' houses or when I would see my friends with their parents. I never saw that triangulation. I never saw that kind of wanting to turn my child into a joke or humiliate them or kind of make it look like they are constantly disrespecting me and abandoning me. And I don't remember one year of my life where that didn't happen, even this year. Happy 2025. And the thing about this episode, I've cried while writing it. I'm giggling now, but probably not to cry, is that I I wish my mother had compensated for how horrible my father was to me by being extra kind and extra sweet and extra devoted. But she was sick, she was tired, and she was mean about it. And I I know she loved me because in her head love is providing, and that she did. And this is where it goes into, how we judge the safe parent. She made sure that in terms of provisions I was safe. I just didn't feel loved. And I think in her head, love was I make sure you have a roof over your head. I make sure you're fed, but I don't talk to you under that roof. And the only time you hear my voice is when I'm yelling at you to clean dishes. And you know, there's an empty chair. My dad didn't show up again, but my mom did and my grandmother did, and they always showed up for me. But it was sometimes it was a real risk whether or not they would turn the crowd against me. And this was a moment where I just needed her to lie to me. I think I had the contrary. Even when I was good, my mother told me I was bad or something was off. And she kind of lived in this mentality of like, there's no such, that teacher that never gives anybody a 100. They always give them like a 98 because nothing is perfect. She's that teacher, except in motherhood. Always something off, fix that. And it has cut my confidence to the point of slowing me down and not making me take really great ideas when I have them because there's always something off. And she cut her warrior. Because the reason, like I said, the reason I always get hesitant to talk about my mother is that we had our issues, but she was there and she never stopped being there, even if I didn't always enjoy her presence, my mother said. And she did this thing of kind of looking at the other parents, like to join her in laughter. And she got bigger in laughter and started flailing her body uncontrollably. And my mother has this weird moment of, and it's something that I noticed with one of my other aunts, such one of her besties, this kind of when she wants to turn the room against me, she looks to see if they're joining in. And she's shocked when they don't. But the contrast is that she has friends that will never say a bad word about their kid. Their kid is not only doing excellently, their kid is excellence. And she judges them like they, how could nobody's perfect? You can't say that to your kid. That's not how you raise a kid, telling them they're always great. And they've got families and they've got houses and they've got the dream careers or at least a career. And I look at them and I take notes because I don't ever want my daughter to feel like I felt that day. And especially at a young age, I felt ashamed. I felt embarrassed. And then I got shamed for being embarrassed because she said I had no humor. I had to accept I sucked. And she took me out of the class. And, she didn't even think that next week they would ask, why are you out? Why are you out? It was just fun. And I'm a very adventurous spirit. I like to do things whether I'm bad at them or not. Like my family, always loved bowling, so I started doing bowling events for my family. And pretty soon, I knew I was bad because they were buying me nachos and they're always calling me fat. And this event that I did to unite us ended up isolating me, which kind of is very definitive for my family and my relationships. Um, and I just really like to bowl. Yes, I might get gutter too much, but I genuinely enjoy the act. And one of the things about I always excelled in singing and acting. Always, always, always. And I think that's what kept it safe from them and kept me safe from them. Having something that I was undeniably good at, that also they weren't. Like they weren't a pack of singers. They were musical, but they weren't special. And I don't think they understood something can just be special because of how it makes you feel. Like I love to paint, but they were, oh, you're so bad, you're so bad, you're so bad. I don't care. It gives me peace. Like you can do things to do things. You can just be. And I think there was an element which I talk about. My mother defined, she talks about this magical, mystical moment of when she was hot. when she was younger, and how she dressed so fashion and all that. And I've never done that. I've never been that, not like she did. And I think there was an element of she wanted the gentle piano player. I wanted to bash some drums. Okay. And it's funny because she made fun of how serious I was. I did not smile that day. I was gung mother effing ho. I was ready. Like I was going to lead us into battle. I really like, oh my God, it's so sad. Like it's sad and funny. It's one, I think I'm trauma laughing, honestly, because I was invested. I was invested and it's so, my childhood has made it, I'm such an excited person. And I hate that my childhood shamed me for being excited, for being passionate. My father had to do it because that was the only way he would abuse me. And my mother did it because she thought that oddly protected me. Like she thought, it's a very Latino mentality sometimes. This kind of, we bully each other to protect as some kind of prep for how badly the world will bully us and silence us. Yet I don't see us fighting the world. Like every day we lose another human right. Trump is president, like I don't know if that tactic is working. I think I'm going to love me into self-defense. But yeah, I mean, it's something that I notice. I don't, and especially now that I have healthier friendships, healthier relationships, that I'm in a healthier place with myself and getting healthier. I don't like when I meet my friends' parents, they're like, they just brag about them. And it's just a whole conversation either about their life or how great their kid is. And my mom is very ping pongy, very bantery, very, this one. And I don't want that for me. And I'm not ashamed to say it. That will not be in my household. That will not be in my parenting. And that will not be in my partnership. And it's very weird because I appreciate my mom. I love my mom. And usually I have a laundry list of things that I don't want to be with in relation to my father. How I, things I don't want that were like my dad. It feels like betrayal to say there are things I don't want of my mom. But my father couldn't have gotten away with so much abuse if she didn't have some level of distortion herself. And I think her definition of protecting me sometimes matched my father's method of abusing me. And that kind of turning the crowd against was one way. So check out daddyrecovery.com. Check out deandrewiesitall.com and check out Hadleen on all music platforms.